MCP servers are an amazing way to save on time and add productivity to your workflow, particularly inside of Claude Code. Now, if you don't know what MCP servers are, they're basically a way to interact with other tools using natural language, meaning that if you so much as mention something that MCP server is listening out for, such as take this design from Figma or reference this documentation from Context 7, then the AI will know exactly what to do, call that tool, and give you added functionality. Quick side note, this is why when we hear that a LLM has been trained on tool calls, you know they're going to do really well with things like MCP. So if you're ready to learn to install MCP servers inside of Claude Code and learn a little bit more about what they do, then this is the video for you. Let's get cracking. Sometimes there just isn't an example of how to install different types of MCP servers inside of Claude Code. So we're just going to break those down and make you familiar with the different components that make up MCP servers and how to install them. So the first one we're going to do is Taskmaster. Now, I have other videos on Taskmaster. You can go research what the tool is, but realistically, we're just interested in this sort of configuration, which you may or may not be familiar with. Now, the first thing to note is that you're not installing these MCPs through Claude Code itself. You're actually doing it through your terminal. I'm using Warp here, but any terminal will do. And to install any MCP server, you're going to type Claude MCP add. And looking back into Taskmaster here, we're not seeing any remote URLs or anything like that, so we can assume this is just a normal local MCP server. But what you also see is a bunch of environment variables that it needs. Now, sometimes you won't have to install environment variables. It'll be quite clean. We'll show you an example of that. But in this instance, we need to pass it some environment variables. Now, the first argument is the name. And this can be anything you want, but realistically, you want to call it something that makes sense. And in this instance, it's just going to be called Taskmaster. The next argument, which I recommend setting just so you're familiar with it, is the .s command. And this means the scope. There are 3 places you can place an MCP server. So the first one is local, and this is default. And theoretically, you don't have to type in anything for it to work like this. And this will be private to you on this specific project. Then there's project, which is public to the project. This will create a .mcp.json file which you can push up to GitHub and share with your team. The final option is global or user, and this is again private to you, but it's across all of your projects on your local machine. That's what we're going to do here because I want Taskmaster available on every single project. And now we're going to start typing in some of these environment variables. Like I say, not all MCP servers need these, but Taskmaster actually does. So if you type in -E for every single environment variable that we need. So in this instance, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 9 possible environment variables. We need -E 9 times here. So the first one will be Anthropic API key. We type this and pass in the API key here. The next one will be Perplexity API key. -E, Perplexity API key, and then the API key there. You'll obviously generate those. And once you're done with all of your environment variables, you type --, and this is where we get to business. So in this instance, and again, you might be familiar with something like this in Claude Code, which is why I'm doing this episode, so you can kind of deconstruct it if there aren't any Claude Code instructions available to you. The first argument is the command, and there's only one command here. This could be npx, could be Python or whatever. You'll have to just have a look to see what the instructions are. In this instance is npx, and then you want a list of arguments. Now there are 3 arguments here, so let's just copy those over. The first one is -y, next one is package Taskmaster there, and then the final one is Taskmaster AI. Hit install right now. This should install onto my user config. Now this will be available across my whole computer on every single code base we want, and we can verify this by opening up Claude, typing /mcp, and you've got Taskmaster. You can see it's connected and it's running. Now once again, you might not have these environment variables. Let's just do a quick example of Context 7 here. You can see there's no environment variables being passed. It's just naming the MCP server and passing in the arguments themselves. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's install one of my favorite SSE MCP servers, and that is Figma. They have Claude Code instructions, but in the name of just understanding what's going on here, let's just take a look at what you might find inside of Cursor and understand how we can deconstruct this in order to install it or convert it to Claude Code. Quite clearly, this is an SSE server. So jumping back into our terminal here, we type Claude MCP add, and this time we pass in the transport flag, and we're going to type SSE as our transport value. Once again, if you want it to store locally to your project, you can just leave this blank, but once again, we're going to store this the user, and we're just going to name this Figma. And here is the URL that it needs. Copy that into our arguments here, press enter, should be installed, verify that inside of Claude Code, MCP, and it's installed, but it's failed because I'm not running Figma. Now you do need a dev account on Figma. I have a video on it, which I'll link below and up in the card. This will get it all up and running, but I recommend the Figma MCP server so much. Now let's install Context 7 as a remote server. Let's break this down. Once again, you might see something like this. Nothing much to tell us that this is a remote server other than just checking the URL with a /MCP. They do have instructions, but we're just going to ignore those for a minute. And we're going to go Claude MCP add. We're going to pass that transport flag in again, but this time we're going to type HTTP. We're going to call this Context 7. Just a reminder that we could type in the S command if you want it locally, project or whatever, but we're going to leave that blank. In fact, we're going to do project just so I can show you the .mcp file that you can push up to GitHub. We go to here, copy the URL, paste that there and install. You can now see we've got this mcp.json file with our Context 7 MCP in there, and now you can add this to your GitHub, push it up and share it with your team. Make sure it's involved as a part of every single project. If you are migrating from Cursor, we can actually copy and paste these into Claude Code. I want to take this super base one here, and if we take that JSON that's in there, we copy that. Instead of our terminal, we go Claude MCP add -JSON, and we can name it super base here. And inside of single quotes, this is really important, it's single quotes. We just paste that JSON, hit enter, and we're good to go. This one installed locally because I didn't pass the scope flag at all there. But now we've got Superbase installed via JSON. Another really clever way, if you want to pull in all the MCP servers through Claude Desktop, which I know a lot of people, that's their first introduction to MCP servers. Once again, Claude MCP add -from -Claude Desktop. It's pretty self-explanatory that I'm not going to do that, but that will pull in all of your MCP servers from Claude Desktop into Claude Code. And so there you go. There's plenty more ways you can run MCP servers inside of Claude Code. If you want me to dive deeper into those, then let me know down in the comments. Thank you to all my Patreons, and thank you to watching until the end. If you like this sort of content, then make sure you hit that subscribe button. And until next time, keep on vibing.